You ever hear a sound so quiet it scares you, not because it's peaceful, but because you know something's out there, and it's waiting, watching. That was every night in 1955 Mississippi. My name is Mark Joie, and you're watching Injustice Brown, where truth don't hide beneath history. Folks, if this story pulls at something inside you, subscribe and leave a comment below. Say what needs saying. Single quotes. Elijah was only 8 years old, small for his age. With a wide stare that didn't blink too much, he lived in a shack made of breath. A prayer-thin walls, tin roof, and floorboards you could see through if the light hit right. He didn't know it then, but them floorboards were gonna teach him more about this world than any school ever could. His mama worked the cotton fields from sunup to dark, woke up with cracked hands, came home with a back so sore she barely made it to the table. His granddaddy, the older, worked now, mostly sat on the porch and smoked in silence. That silence stretched deep, like they were always listening for something or waiting for it. At night, Elijah would lay on the floor and feel the cold breeze through the cracks. He'd try not to cough, 'cause sound traveled. Sound could bring trouble, and trouble had a name, Mr. Carroll. He was the white man who owned the land, rode around on his horse with a bottle in one hand and a shotgun in the other. Every evening, right around dusk, his voice would echo through the trees, slurred, mean, sometimes laughing, sometimes shouting, always saying things Elijah didn't understand, but his mama sure did. One night, Elijah was sitting at the table, picking at cornbread and beans, when he heard her voice real low. She was talking to Granddaddy, said a name he hadn't heard before, Leela. She whispered. That name hung in the air like smoke. She said Leela was just 17. She used to work the houses down, singing while she picked cotton. Then one day, she didn't show up. No goodbye, no note. Folks whispered, but nobody said it out loud, not where it could be heard, not where it could get someone killed. They took her, his mama whispered, just like they always do, and ain't nobody gonna stop him. Elijah didn't ask questions. He just looked down at the cracks in the floor and imagined what it felt like to disappear. A week later, the knock came, late, maybe 10 at night. The kind of knock that don't ask permission, it demands it. Elijah's mama moved fast, grabbed him by the arm and pulled up the rug. She didn't have to say a word. He crawled under the floor like he'd done it 100 times. The boards creaked over his head as she dropped the rug back down. From under there, everything sounded distant, but not far enough. He heard the door swing open. Mr. Carroll's voice filled the house like smoke. "I came to check on my workers," he said, slurred, laughing. "Ain't seen you in church lately, Rose." That was his mama's name, Rose. But he said it like it belonged to him. Elijah could hear her voice, calm but shaking. "We been sick," she lied. "Sick, huh? Lotta folks getting sick lately. Lotta girls running off too." His boots thudded across the floor above Elijah's head. Then silence. Then one loud stomp. Right over him. Elijah didn't breathe. Not a sip of air. His heartbeat was louder than the wind through the cracks. Then Mr. Carroll laughed. "You know what happens when people start keeping secrets, Rose." Another stomp. Then the sound of spitting. On the floor. On their home. Then the door slammed. Elijah didn't move. Not for a long while. Not until his mama lifted the rug and pulled him out with shaking hands. Her face was blank, but her eyes were red with something worse than fear. Shame. They didn't talk about it. Not that night. Not the next. But after that, Elijah never sat at the table the same. Never looked at floorboards the same. He knew now they weren't just wood. They were shelter. They were prison. They were witness to things no child should ever have to understand. He started to carry silence the way other kids carried toys. Held it close, protected it, trusted it to keep him alive. Because in that world, being quiet could save your life, but it would cost you something to die, something deep, something you don't even know you've lost. Till much later, and Elijah, he was just getting started. By 14, Elijah had learned how to disappear without going nowhere. He walked with his head low, didn't laugh aloud, didn't run, even when he wanted to. Folks say childhood's supposed to be the freest time of your life, but for him, freedom was a trap. 'Cause the second you looked free, somebody reminded you weren't. He'd grown tall enough to make white men glance twice, smart enough to make him uncomfortable. His teachers didn't say much, but one of them once pulled him aside and said, "Maybe don't raise your hand so much. Let others answer too." Elijah didn't argue. He just nodded, But inside something started to splinter. It was a Tuesday. Hot, dry air that stuck to your back like guilt. Elijah had just left school, book bag slung over one shoulder, thinking about math problems and how hungry he was. He was halfway down Pine Street when the siren barked. One sharp, angry police car. He didn't run. He didn't even flinch. Just turned slow, like he knew the script already. The white officer stepped out. Wide grins, the kind that never reached the eyes. You fit a description, one of them said. What description? Elijah asked. Wrong question. Before he could blink, they had him up against a chain-link fence. One of them yanked his bag off. The other pushed his head down. Gravel scraped his knees. He tried to speak, but a boot hit the fence inches from his face. You got sticky fingers, huh? The taller one asked. You steal from Mrs. Halpern's store. I was at school, Elijah muttered, voice shaking. They didn't care. They never do. One of them leaned close enough Elijah could smell his cologne, cheap and bitter. Then he spat, right on Elijah's shirt. That spit, it wasn't about evidence. It wasn't about guilt or truth or crime. It was a message. You think you're going somewhere, the shorter cop said, squatting down beside him. You're not. Boys like you end up dead or in cuffs. That's it. That's the story. And then, just like that, they walked off. No rest. No paperwork. Just a warning, a bruise, and a stain that wouldn't wash out. Elijah stood there for a long time, shirt clinging to his chest, hands still trembling. He looked around, but no one was there. No neighbors peeked out. No cars stopped. The world just kept on spinning, like nothing happened. He walked home slower than usual, not because he was scared. He was used to scared. It was the rage this time, that new, ugly feeling growing somewhere deep in his stomach, the kind that didn't go away overnight. When he stepped inside the house, his grandfather looked up from the porch. He didn't ask what happened. He just studied Elijah's eyes, saw everything he needed to see. Later that night, over a plate of beans and cornbread, Granddaddy finally spoke. Being smart's dangerous if you're black, he said, voice low like a prayer, but being silent. He shook his head. That might kill you too. Elijah stared down at the table. His mama was washing clothes in the next room, humming something soft, something broken. He wanted to cry. He didn't. He wanted to scream. He did in single quotes instead. He went to his room, pulled out an old notebook from under his bed, and wrote about the fence, the spit, the lies, the fire. He didn't know what he was going to do with it, but he knew he had to keep it, because if the world was going to keep telling lies about who he was, then he had to start telling the truth, even if it was just to himself. He tore out the page, folded it twice, and slipped it through a crack in the floorboards. Same floorboards he once hid beneath as a boy. Now, they were holding something new, his voice, and he wasn't planning on staying quiet forever. Elijah was 16 when he first started to believe he might get out, not just leave, but escape. A teacher had pulled him aside one day after school, told him about a program, small, quiet thing run out of a church in St. Louis, helping black boys with promise move north to real schools, real futures. You've got it, she said, with a look in her eye that almost scared him. Don't let it rot down here. He filled out the forms late one night, shaky pen, beat up envelope, wrote the return address under the name of a cousin the town's over, just to be safe, mailed it behind the feed store where nobody watched, then waited. Weeks went by, and just when hope started fading, the letter came, thick paper, heavy ink, a seal. He stared at it for a long time, turning it over in his hands like it might burn him. When he finally opened it, the words jumped off the page. Accepted. Full scholarship, room and board, a train ticket, even. He could barely breathe. He ran home, heart pounding like thunder under his ribs. But when he walked in, his mother was already standing there, empty hands, blank face. She'd found the letter. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him and said, "You're not going." Elijah didn't understand, didn't want to. He asked her why once, then twice, then louder. I said no, but this is Mama. This is a chance. You don't even gotta pay. I don't care. And that was it. The conversation ended like a slammed door. Days passed, then weeks. The letter, gone. He searched everywhere, under beds, in drawers, through piles of laundry. Nothing until one day, cleaning the bedroom while she was out, Elijah lifted the mattress. There was crumpled, creased, torn at one corner, but still there. The weight of that discovery crushed him. It wasn't just the hiding. It was what it meant. She didn't believe in it, didn't believe in him. When she got home, he held it up, said nothing at first. She froze. He asked, "Why would you hide this?" "From me." Her mouth opened, but no sound came. He pushed harder this time. "Why don't you want me to leave?" Her voice cracked when it finally came. "Because your father tried to leave." Elijah stared. She'd never talked about his father, not once, not by name, not by story. Now her eyes were wet, her shoulders small, her whole frame folding in on itself like paper. He wanted to vote, she said. Back in 42, they said no. He said he'd take it to court, said he had the right. She paused, looked past him. Somewhere far, they found him behind the church 3 days later, shot in the head, twice. The room went silent, the kind of silence that ain't just quiet, it's hollow, cold. He was just trying to leave too, she whispered. Then, without warning, she slapped Elijah across the face. It wasn't anger. It was fear. The kind that don't know how to love and protect at the same time. He didn't hit back, didn't move. She broke down right there in front of him. He stood frozen, his cheek burning, heart cracked wide open. That night, he sat at the kitchen table with his old notebook, tore out a clean sheet, and wrote a letter, a new one. He wrote about wanting more, needing it, not just for him but for everyone buried in southern soil who never got the chance. His father, Lila, the names nobody said out loud anymore. He folded it, sealed it, and tucked it in his coat. The next morning, he walked for miles to the train station post office, dropped it into the slot, didn't tell his mother, didn't ask permission. He walked home slow, with nothing but the wind at his back and fire in his chest. Whatever was coming, he was done hiding. The floorboards could only hold so much silence. It was time to let the world hear him. The train screeched into Chicago like it was angry. Elijah stepped off with a cardboard suitcase, $5 in his pocket, and a promise he made to himself 2 months back. Don't fold. Don't disappear. The air smelled different up here. Like iron and smoke, the city moved faster. People didn't look you in the eye unless they wanted something. And yet for a moment he let himself believe maybe things would be different. Maybe this was a place where a boy like him could finally breathe. But it didn't take long to learn the rules hadn't changed. They just dressed themselves up in new clothes. Racism wore a necktie in Chicago. It held open doors, but locked opportunities, smiled in elevators, but tightened its grip the second you turned around. Elijah could ride the bus now without being called boy, but he still got followed in corner stores, still saw white women clutch their purses when he passed. Still, God told you people by folks who swore they didn't see color. His host family was kind, in that careful way people are when they've never had to know your pain. They gave him a warm bed, a quiet place to study, a seat at their dinner table. But the first week he brought up Emmett Till, the look on their faces changed. "We don't talk about race at the table, Elijah," the father said, not unkindly. "We just want you to succeed," the mother added. "You have a real shot here. Don't mess it up. Just study hard. Keep your head down. Keep your head down." Same thing his teachers back home said. Same thing the cop whispered before walking away. Same thing they told every black boy who started thinking for himself. That night, Elijah sat in his small room, looking out at the street light, flickering through a cracked window, and thought about his grandfather's words. Being silent might kill you too. He opened his journal, wrote until the ink bled through the paper, then tore the page and tucked it under his pillow. Not the floorboards this time, because he was done hiding. He started showing up at community meetings, listening, asking questions, not just about school, about housing, jobs, voter registration, police patrol zones. He realized Chicago wasn't a safe haven, it was a prettier battlefield. So he spoke in classrooms, in church basements, in the backs of bookstores. He spoke about Mississippi, about the floorboards, about silence, and people listened. Until one night, they didn't. It was supposed to be peaceful. Sitting at the South Side Municipal Building, 20, maybe 30 students, quiet, still, not a single chant. They just wanted the city to release arrest records of black youth who'd been taken without charge. They brought no books, not weapons. But the cops came anyway, fast. No warning, no conversation. One grabbed Elijah from behind, twisting his arm until it cracked. Another brought the baton down hard on his back. A third hit him in the mouth so violently he dropped like a rag doll. He saw boots, blood, cold towel. Then nothing. When Elijah woke up in the hospital, he couldn't speak. His jaw was wired shut, his lips swollen, his teeth shattered. The nurse told him he was lucky. He didn't feel lucky, but he wasn't scared either, because lying in that white-sheeted bed, eyes bruised and throat burning, Elijah had a new clarity. They could silence his mouth, but not the message, not the fire. It lived in the pages of his journal, in the voices of the kids he taught math to in the evenings, in the woman who wiped his face and whispered, "We saw what happened. You did good, baby, real good." He healed slow. Every sip through a straw hurt, but pain had a purpose now, because sometimes, when you stop speaking, the truth starts echoing louder than any scream, and Elijah wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By the time Elijah turned 30, he didn't just carry his voice, he taught it. Every morning, he stood in front of a classroom on Chicago's South Side, not with a ruler or a chalkboard pointer, but with a truth that ran deep and couldn't be erased. He taught black kids how to write with power, how to speak like they meant it, how to fight without fists, without fire, but with a voice that couldn't be shut up or shut down. Some days, it felt like preaching. Other days, like surgery. He pulled pain out of kids who thought they didn't have a story, and when they found it, the whole room changed. That building he taught in rundown, peeling paint, windows that stuck was the same housing project people had tried to forget, the same block where silence used to live, but Elijah knew its value, knew what had grown inside it. So when the letter came slick, polite, printed on expensive paper saying a developer planned to demolish the building to make room for mixed use condos, something broke loose. They called it progress. Elijah called it erasure. He'd seen this before. They bulldoze poverty, then build guilt on top of it. But this time, he stood up. He knocked on doors, held meetings in church basements, helped neighbors understand the laws, their rights, their strength. The city tried to ignore them, but people kept showing up. First 20, then 100, then more. When the lawsuit landed in the mayor's office, they finally listened. The judge ruled in the community's favor. The condos never broke ground, but something else did. On that same land, where they'd once tried to build silence, a new community center rose from the dirt, not fancy, not glossy, but solid, proud, and filled with every story they tried to bury. At the dedication, Elijah stood at the podium, a microphone in front of him, his students sitting in the front row, his mother in the back, hands folded, eyes wet. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something old. Worn. Creacd. His journal, the same one he started when he was 14, the one he used to hide under floorboards, behind radiators, in the soles of his shoes during the sit-ins, the one he'd carried like armor through every room that tried to silence him. He opened it. And read. He read about fear, about spit on shirts and boots against ribs, about mothers who loved so hard it hurt, about a boy who thought silence was safety until he realized truth was stronger. Every word filled the room, every sentence stretched across time. Because now, Elijah didn't whisper. Now, he didn't hide. Now, he spoke so others could live. And the same floorboards that once muffled his breath, they weren't beneath him anymore. They were behind him, and he was standing tall. Thank you for sharing this journey and for telling the stories that matter. If the story moved you. I'm Mark Join, and this is Injustice Browning. Subscribe, share, and drop a comment below, because silence may have saved lives once, but it's truth that changes the world.